We live in a dangerous world, surrounded by things that easily ignite, combust, explode. But what about us? Can humans suddenly burst into flames? The idea has been around for centuries, and bizarre fire scenes seem to lend it credence.
One of the greatest mysteries that confronts mankind, certainly on an individual basis, is this amazing phenomenon of spontaneous human combustion. It appears to be able to afflict anyone at any time.
The notion that spontaneous human combustion exists is doubtful in the extreme.
When I said this fire came out of my clothes, and they couldn't believe it. And they even asked me if I came from another planet.
A body cannot burn from the inside out. There's no reason that this could happen. No biological reason, no medical reason, no reason at all.
Is spontaneous human combustion real, or the stuff of pure fantasy? Examine the evidence with believers and skeptics alike as science and the supernatural collide with incendiary results.
The body was completely gone. There was a portion of the head and a portion of the right leg. What the hell happened? How did this happen?
On the evening of March 26, 1986, fire officials in upstate New York were called to investigate the scene of an utterly baffling fire. Even for a trained fire professional, it would prove a deeply disturbing experience. Robert Purdy was among the first on the scene.
I've investigated a lot of fire scenes, and I've never seen anything like this. Never, ever. It's something that I'll never forget, ever. The man went to bed as a whole man, and he wound up 3.5 pounds of bone from a 180-pound man in his bed that didn't burn the house down. How did this happen?
The remains of George Mott, a retired firefighter, lay on his charred bed. But little else in the room had burned.
Was it homicide? Hell no, I don't think so. We looked at all the aspects of that. Was it suicide? I doubt it very, very sincerely. I wish I had an answer. I know the man's dead.
What did happen here? The remains of people burned nearly to ashes while their surroundings stay largely intact have confounded fire researchers for decades. What kind of fire could possibly consume a human being without setting the rest of the room on fire? How could a person who was burning not try to put himself out unless he had gone up in flames almost instantaneously? This is not the only time such a mysterious fire death has occurred. Mary Reeser, age 67, St. Petersburg, Florida, July 2nd, 1951. Vanished, except for a liver, a leg, and a bit of skull. Helen Conway, age 51, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. On Sunday, November 8th, 1964, her daughter came upon this awful scene. Also in Pennsylvania, Dr. John Irving Bentley, age 92. Discovered on December 5th, 1966. Only a single leg remained. Just 3 of dozens of similar cases. All tragic death scenes, and instant fodder for tabloids and mystery mongers. But the fact is, once in a while, someone does die this way. For centuries, people have asserted that the fire that consumes such victims came from within their own bodies. Believers call it spontaneous human combustion, or SHC. Larry Arnold is the author of a book on SHC called Ablaze.
Damn it, you better face up to the facts that on rare occasions spontaneous human combustion does occur and deal with the ramifications of it.
Skeptics, on the other hand, call SHC pure bunk. Dr. Joe Nickel is a full-time investigator of the paranormal.
A huge percentage of our body is water. There is no chemical combination or any kind of situation that we could envision in which we would spontaneously combust. So it's somewhere between slim and none, but it's worse than that, actually.
The basics of any kind of combustion come down to this: heat, fuel, and oxygen. In ordinary combustion, you apply heat to fuel in the presence of oxygen, and it burns. In spontaneous combustion, a fuel source, like oily rags, oxidizes, creating its own heat source, and ignites. This is a well-known fire hazard. Spontaneous human combustion, on the other hand, is supposed to begin deep within the body, where there is no ready oxygen and no recognized source of ignition. Because the victim usually dies and no one has ever witnessed a complete SHC event, the mystery only deepens. Very occasionally, someone apparently combusts and survives in front of witnesses. We begin our investigation with a remarkable story of one such survivor. Belgium, New Year's Day, 2002, just north of Brussels. While driving home from the beach with her family, Adele Waldak suddenly found a flame exploding from her thigh. She was seriously burned from waist to knee. To this day, her doctors are mystified by the cause of the fire. Advocates of SHC think this might be the case that proves that the human body can burn from within. Two very different detectives have traveled to Belgium to solve this mystery. Larry Arnold, world's foremost investigator of anomalous fires and an emphatic believer in SHC. For 30 years, he has traveled the world gathering proof that humans can burn from within.
We love it that if this work of ours would earn us a Nobel Prize in medicine, a Nobel Prize in physics, we think we deserve one. It remains to be seen how history treats us and our research.
Arnold's longtime nemesis, forensic biologist Mark Benecke. He is one of Germany's best crime scene investigators. The police call on him to solve the bizarre cases. He is in Belgium to find an alternative to SHC in Adele's case.
It's just about truth. If you want to find out the truth, number one is don't trust yourself. I mean, don't think that you or anybody else knows how the world works. When it comes to weird, special cases, you really have to switch your brain to the brain of a 5-year-old and don't say, that's not possible, that's not possible.
She's looking to understand what happened to her, as are we looking to understand, to explore that possibility to see whether the facts, the best evidence available, will lend us to believe that she did indeed experience and survive SHC.
Though Benecke and Arnold differ completely on whether SHC exists, both believe the truth in this case lies somewhere in the testimony of the victim and the witnesses.
To understand what happened in any case, be it a crime case, allegedly paranormal case, it's good to know really all the details straight from the witnesses to see the actual scene of crime or the actual scene where it happened.
We believe that the factors that cause spontaneous human combustion are not common.
Bonjour, Adele.
Bonjour.
Hi, Larry Arnold. It's so nice to meet you.
We believe that in many cases, a number of factors have to come together. Were you wearing nylons? Factors have to coincide to create just the precisely correct environment that allows spontaneous human combustion to occur. Let's start at the beginning and have you tell us exactly what happened to you on January 1st of 2002.
Yes, we were going for a walk on the beach the day after New Year's Eve. My daughter said, "Oh, Mama, look, here is such a very nice shell, a little shell she found, an oyster shell, but a very small one." It was something special. It was with a very nice curl here.
Uh-huh. Was it very much like this one?
Almost, yes. Without thinking, I put it later in my pocket, in my left pocket. And we returned to the car. We came there and I took my handkerchief from my pocket and I dried my hands because they were wet from taking something on the beach. And I put it in my pocket, also in my left pocket.
Okay.
And it was together with this shell. We were driving home, maybe half an hour later. I felt something on my here on my
upper thigh.
My upper thigh, yes. Okay. 10 seconds later, I saw coming out of my pocket a blue flame. It was not natural. It's like I was dreaming.
And these were taken the day you admitted?
At the moment I came in the hospital.
Do you recall any episode in that area of the beach where you went on January 1st that would have involved an oil spill cleanup in the last couple of years, or any other kind of contamination of the beach that you would have read about in the newspaper?
There was everywhere rests of firework.
What type of firework?
Oh, every kind.
Like these rockets that you shoot?
Yes, and so far as we could see, everywhere there were rests of it laying on the beach. It's
maybe it just. But then again, why would that be on the shell? And why? And you also need some of it. So since you are saying you did not see anything.
No.
Is this the first clue? Could leftover New Year's fireworks have contaminated the shell? If so, what caused them to combust in Adele's pocket?
It needs a source. And at this point, we don't know what that source is.
It is an unusual case. You know, there's more to it. So I guess it's worth to look a little bit deeper into the whole subject.
For now, the verdict is still out on the mysterious fire that burned Adele Waldeck. But it's time to return to the baffling death of George Mott, whose case many believe provides the ultimate proof that spontaneous human combustion exists. What were his last moments like? And what reduced him to 3 pounds of charred ash and bone?
We have long pondered what the last few minutes of George Mott's life must have been like. He was very methodical, meticulous in his daily routine. He probably went to his bathroom, perhaps bathed or at least washed off. He was on medications. He probably took the medications that he'd set out on the table that night and got dressed for bed. Sometime after he lay down in bed, the macabre, the mysterious, the nonsensical happened to his body. Whatever took out George Mott, we believe happened within his body, happened without his conscious awareness, was painless to him.
I think it was quick. I don't think George Mott really knew what was going on. I think he was devoured quite quickly.
Belief in people bursting into flames has long been part of myth and folklore. But by the 17th century in Europe, some doctors recognized spontaneous human combustion as an official diagnosis. To what did they attribute this sudden and lethal combustibility? Alcohol.
The idea that drunkenness and spontaneous combustion were somehow related was very popular. The temperance movement was using spontaneous human combustion as a boogeyman to scare people away from drinking.
I'm not so sure if the people who actually spread the legend really believed in it, or maybe they thought it was a good method to make people drink less.
Spontaneous human combustion might have vanished from the culture if it weren't for one fiery death scene. In 1852, Charles Dickens wrote about spontaneous human combustion in his novel Bleak House. Late one night, a young man witnesses an unimaginable horror. A wicked drunk named Crook dies. Suddenly. The novel caused a sensation. Other writers of the day likewise had characters explode in their novels. Early on, science tried to weigh in on SHC. 19th century chemist Justus von Liebig conducted a simple experiment to test the alcohol-human combustion link. German forensic biologist Dr. Mark Benecke is going to recreate that experiment for us.
Well, the idea in former times was that if you drink alcohol, this could ignite and set your body on fire. Now, if this was true, then you would have to have a burning from inside out. The classical experiment when it comes to SHC or alleged SHC is just to soak a cotton ball with alcohol and then set it on fire. This is a very easy experiment that shows that if something is soaked with alcohol, it burns from outside in because it needs the oxygen and the oxygen is outside. And even if it is a little bit blackened on the outside or even severely blackened on the outside, you will see that inside it's still white. Even though the complete cotton ball was soaked with alcohol, it did not burn inside at all. And this clearly contradicts the idea that if you ingest alcohol, it starts to burn. You know, that's just obviously not the case.
So much for the alcohol theory of SHC. So what could ignite the human body spontaneously in the absence of oxygen? Modern-day proponents of SHC have put forward theories that are far more explosive. SHC proponent Larry Arnold, for one, thinks the answer may lie in theoretical physics. Some would say extremely theoretical physics.
Spontaneous human combustion, we believe, can best be explained as a Hiroshima effect. Quantum physics tells us that the amount of energy necessary to dehydrate a body to ash postulates the existence of an ultra-small subatomic particle, the pyrotron. Here's the theory. This pyrotron zips through the universe almost unimpeded because it is so small it shoots right through the spaces in the atoms that compose our bodies. But on rare occasions, we posit that a subatomic pyrotron will impact a quark in a body, setting off a chain reaction. This chain reaction unleashes a tremendous amount of localized energy instantaneously, certainly sufficient to dehydrate, to break down the human body. And that's where we find ashen human remains in an environment that is otherwise largely devoid of significant fire and or heat damage.
Trouble is, you won't find a pyrotron in even the most up-to-date physics journal.
My background is physics, high-energy physics. There's a lot of the physics of energy that are well supported by, centuries of experiment and data that show that simply can't happen.
Skeptic Nickel is even more direct.
It's like trying to define the tooth fairy. It's an imaginary subatomic particle that somehow causes conflagrations. It's unknown to science and is silly.
Apparently, the pyrotron is not the only theory of SHC that involves the human body going nuclear. Our investigation takes us to Greece, where a rather intriguing experiment is about to take place. Dr. Panos Pappas, inventor of medical devices, believes he may have uncovered the cause of spontaneous human combustion. He's among a small group of scientists who believe the body is fueled by nuclear reactions within our cells. Pappas thinks these reactions could occasionally spiral out of control and cause the body to burst into flames.
And that controlled nuclear reactions are daily process that keep us alive. And probably they could go out of control like Chernobyl and release too much energy that will lead to a human combustion.
This is his hypothesis. Potassium inside our cells is the result of fusion, as in nuclear fusion. He thinks electrical current can increase the rate of the fusion reaction in a measurable way.
By exposing the human body to electrical excitation, this reaction takes place is the cell itself.
The proof, he believes, will register in his bloodstream. He should have more potassium in his blood after stimulating his body with electricity. Now he applies electrical pulses using his own invention, the papimi, normally used to treat everything from infections to arthritis.
In a cellular level, I'm exciting the nucleuses of whatever atoms are there, and I'm enhancing the nuclear reaction. Okay, I think I'm ready for... I cooked myself enough.
He draws his blood again. Dr. Pappas is confident there will be more potassium in the second sample as a result of a biological nuclear reaction.
If something is possible, it should occur. If it is possible, and what I'm telling you, it's possible here.
We'll be sending the analysis of Dr. Pappas's blood sample to our forensic biologist for his opinion. But first, we decided to check in with someone who knows the inner workings of our cells intimately. Immunologist Dr. Gerald Callahan. The author of Faith, Madness, and Spontaneous Human Combustion, Dr. Callahan takes a more traditional view. Fusion does not and cannot make potassium in human cells.
There are some places where fusion has certainly been shown to occur, but no place on this planet. It occurs spontaneously inside of stars, where temperatures and pressures reach enormous amounts. No conditions inside living cells even approximate the conditions found inside of stars.
Just to cover our bases, though, let's check in with Dr. Benecki, who has received Dr. Pappas's lab report.
I just received the results from the testing of the blood of Dr. Pappas here, and it's very interesting what you can tell from that.
Did electrical stimulation prime the pumps of his minuscule nuclear reactors and turn out more potassium?
Some substances in his blood that were supposed to change, I guess, did not change at all. And it's very interesting how close they are really together. Here it says, for example, potassium, the level before the procedure is 3.7 and the level after is 3.8. In my opinion, as a biologist, as a natural scientist, they are really exactly the same.
It's time to return to the curious case of Adele Waldak and her exploding thigh. Have our detectives made any headway in this astounding event? Forensic biologist Mark Benecki and spontaneous human combustion investigator Larry Arnold plan their next moves. They'll interview the witnesses in the perplexing burning of Adele Waldak.
At this stage in our investigation, there are two possibilities. A, she experienced partial spontaneous human combustion and obviously lived to talk about it. Or B, she picked up some chemical contaminant by some means that caused spontaneous combustion once she placed the object in her pocket.
I asked, do you smoke? You have, how you call it?
A lighter.
A lighter? She said
By
no.
chance, the first witness at the scene was a local ambulance driver.
The lighter can explode. And I asked, what's happening? And she said, I'm burning, please help me.
Did you smell anything?
I smell, but I cannot, ik kon het niet thuisbrengen. Wat het was niet normaal. It was not normal.
Was it like plastics? Or?
I never smelled something like this.
Okay.
It was the first time I smelled something like this, and I cannot say it was this or it was this.
I understand.
And I asked, water please, water. There arrived a police car.
What is interesting is they couldn't extinguish it with the regular fire extinguisher straight away, but they had to pour water on it, and that may also give us an indication to which chemical substance may be involved.
We certainly would like to know whether we can identify a plausible external ignition source for the nature of the burns that she experienced, or whether we can't.
There were burnings of the skin, 2nd and 3rd degree, the lateral side of the knee, lateral side of the leg, and also a few fingers, probably because she tried to extinguish the fire.
This is a vital clue. Adele was only burned on the surface. There is no medical evidence the fire started from within her body. But neither Benecke nor the doctor knows what started the fire.
Okay. Yeah. So do you think anything supernatural could be involved? You personally?
No. No, I don't believe it's supernatural.
Yeah.
There must be an explanation, but I don't have one.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a tape interview with Adele's daughter about
time to question Adele's children, who were in the car with her when the fire started.
That will be the interview following.
First we saw the flame, and then it was all... The car was full of smoke when I put the car on the side.
We've investigated a number of cases around the world where history says, and the eyewitnesses tell us, that bodies will emit on occasion a bright electric blue colored flame from the flesh of a human being. And we're trying to determine whether that's what happened here.
It was crazy. We never saw something like that. It was almost with the strength of a blowtorch, like that. But it made a lot of noise,
You said it did make noise?
Like you light a match.
So it's the sound when you strike a match and the match head bursts into open flame combustion.
Yeah. Nobody could understand.
The match sound is potentially significant for Arnold. In other cases of alleged SHC, witnesses have heard similar noises.
The heat was still going in.
Now it's Dr. Benecke's turn to interview the children.
The shell was sparkling. The source of the heat was very white, and the sparks were flying half a meter far.
From even when the shell was on the floor.
It kept on sparkling.
But you did not step on. Nobody stepped on it or something.
No. I kicked it away. I didn't know if I.
That was good.
It's very bizarre.
But the sparks. That's interesting.
For Benecke, the sparks are the first real break in the case. Initially skeptical about the fireworks found on the beach, he has reconsidered.
I guess there must have been fireworks present because they did see sparks. So I guess some remains of black powder or whatever it was. It doesn't have to be black powder, and it could be tons of different substances that will throw sparks.
Arnold is not convinced. Along with sparks, the witnesses saw blue flame.
The only chemical that we can find in fireworks manufacturing that produces a blue flame is copper. And yet in the analysis that we have, there's no mention of having found any copper residue in any of the materials associated with Adele's burning.
Now, an epic moment in the history of spontaneous human combustion. Larry Arnold, enthusiastic proponent, is about to meet Mark Benecke, dedicated skeptic.
Mark, nice to meet you. How are you doing?
It's a potentially combustible mix, but with a little dousing of Belgium's famous beer, they quickly find common ground.
We can try to exclude as many things that we can exclude, and then let's see whatever remains may be the truth, no matter how unlikely it is.
Will either of them, believer or skeptic, uncover enough evidence to solve the case? In the meantime, there's another spectacular suspect in the strange case of spontaneous human combustion. It's a weather phenomenon that, until recently, science largely scoffed at, but now it's no laughing matter. In the weird annals of alleged spontaneous human combustion, many exotic explanations have been proposed, some of them supernatural. But a natural, if utterly bizarre, explanation may be out there.
The sort of paranormal idea that a person could just burst into flame and be consumed doesn't really seem to hold any water.
Working in his suburban Maryland garage, physicist Paul Kolik is building a machine that he hopes one day will produce one of nature's great remaining enigmas, ball lightning. While long thought to be a paranormal fantasy, ball lightning has recently been accepted by science as a reality, thanks in part to some 10,000 documented sightings of these electrifying orbs. The balls seem to defy gravity, can pass through windows and walls, and have lifespans as long as a minute. They can vanish as quietly as soap bubbles or in fiery explosions. They are usually associated with regular lightning. One theory holds that the balls are made of plasma, a form of superheated matter usually found in outer space. Kolek believes that plasma created by the intense heat of regular lightning can twist in on itself to form spheres, a process he's trying to replicate.
I'm pretty low profile here. As you can see, our vast facility is quite small, but that doesn't mean that we don't think big.
So far, only small balls lasting an instant have been created in the lab. But what does this have to do with SHC? Some believe that ball lightning may have been the last thing fire victims like George Mott ever saw.
Ball lightning is a very high energy dense source of magnetic energy. So ball lightning can generate shocks to a human being, and that means that the person could be rendered unconscious.
In this scenario, the ball lightning doesn't incinerate the victim. Instead, it knocks him or her out and sparks the initial fire. While extremely rare, there are reported cases of people being struck by ball lightning. We will never know if ball lightning appeared that night and set George Mott alight. But ball lightning is so rare that the possibility is pretty slim. So the question remains, can we come up with a more down-to-earth answer to these bizarre fire scenes? Unknown subatomic particles, cellular nuclear reactions, ball lightning, all seem like long shots at best. So does science have a less exotic alternative to SHC? Enter a recent and fairly reasonable explanation. It's called the Wick effect.
The Wick effect, or the Wick experiment, is an experiment in which we try to recreate the actual situation when you have alleged SHC.
Sometimes the most bizarre mysteries can have the most mundane solutions. Think of a dressed body as an inside-out candle. The clothing is the wick. Human fat is the wax. Even a small fire can be hot enough to split open the skin and ignite the fat, while keeping it burning slowly and relentlessly. Benecke demonstrates this effect using a piece of cloth and part of a pig. Pig fat and human fat are remarkably similar. If the conditions are just right, the fat and the cloth will burn like a candle until little is left.
If we let it burn and it continues to burn, it will eat into the muscle tissue, and it can even consume the complete lump of meat.
The Wick effect is an almost perfect solution. It shows that the body has its own fuel source, and that under the right circumstances, it contributes to its own destruction.
But the Wick effect leaves one mystery unsolved. In experiments with pigs, often a good deal of the bone remains intact. In cases of alleged SHC, much of the bone becomes ash.
And what happens to the bones in these cases was a mystery that I wanted to solve.
As a graduate student, anthropologist Angie Christensen tackled the problem. A simple clue led her to a theory.
We realized that the profile of victims of so-called spontaneous human combustion was very similar to the profile of those who are at highest risk for osteoporosis, namely elderly women.
Osteoporosis is the loss of bone density with age.
I took a sample of normal human bone and osteoporotic or less dense human bone and combusted them both for the same time and at the same temperatures in a commercial crematorium. I found indeed that osteoporotic bone was more easily destroyed and showed more thermal damage than normal bone at the same temperatures. This in turn may explain why you can see these bodies that are almost completely destroyed and the bones turn to ash.
The Wick theory also explains one of the true oddities of these cases. Why do legs and feet often remain undamaged? Feet and lower legs have very little fat and are often not covered by clothing, meaning no fuel and no wick. Also relevant, if the victim is seated, fire travels upward. But does the wick effect hold up under real-world conditions? With the help of a fire chemist and a fire engineer, Dr. John DeHaan will try to recreate the Mott fire scene in a burn room run by the state of California.
The bedroom itself was 10 by 12, just about the same size this is. Body fat is a very good fuel, and if you make that available to the fire process and give it long enough, it will sustain combustion until the body is essentially consumed.
That him? Is that the face right there?
Yeah.
Now all he needs is a stand-in for the actual fire victim. DeHaan will use a 150-pound pig. Pig carcasses often stand in for humans when investigators recreate fire scenes. Will DeHaan's fire reduce the carcass to ash? Will the contents of the room survive unscathed?
Well, with any luck, tomorrow we'll nail the coffin shut on the myth of spontaneous human combustion.
But sometimes the best-laid plans of fire investigators go spectacularly awry. And even an enormous dead pig may refuse to cooperate when it comes to solving the elusive riddle of spontaneous human combustion. Fire investigator Dr. John DeHaan is now set to recreate an alleged case of spontaneous human combustion in a laboratory setting. It's time for the experiment to begin.
All the science says it should work, and we'll hope for the best.
John, are you ready? We're going to count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
From this small flame, DeHaan predicts, the pig's fat will ignite and burn slowly, kept alight by the bed linens and mattress until the carcass is entirely consumed. DeHaan believes the fire will reduce the carcass to ash, but never get hot enough to do much damage to the rest of the room. With good reason. He's done this before, and it's worked.
That's a pretty significant fire there. The bottom sheet has ignited.
DeHaan is confident that once the sheets burn away, the fire will soon become a slow smolder of pig fat and pajamas.
We've got fire under the body. The pillow is ignited, at least the pillow case. Blankets are burning as predicted. We're getting a hot smoke layer in the room, and as the temperature in that layer builds up, we may start to affect things like the thermoplastic of the television. The radiant heat output of this fire is so small that bare skin can barely feel it's like a warm summer day over here, and of course there's no effect at all on tissue. I think we should probably plan on backing out. Smoke layers down to less than 3 feet. So far, so good. It's a very localized fire.
But after about 10 minutes, the fire is not behaving as predicted.
We are getting a bigger fire. That may skew the curve here.
What's skewing the curve, apparently, is the opening to the burn room. George Mott's bedroom door may or may not have been open, but it was not being fed by drafts from the outdoors.
We're just getting more extension sideways onto the dresser than I anticipated, so we're going to have a little more collateral damage. On this side, the tissue box is unaffected. There isn't anything happening on this side.
After 15 minutes, the fire is burning out of control. The temperature is approaching 1,000 degrees. Suddenly, the whole room combusts, an explosive phenomenon known as flashover. Here's an awkward situation. The fire experts are going to have to call in the fire department. The fire is so hot that the entire building may be in danger. DeHaan's attempt to show how the wick effect might explain away SHC has gone up in smoke. Inadvertently, though, he may have shown why alleged spontaneous human combustion scenes are so rare. Unless the conditions for the wick effect are perfect, the whole place will go up in smoke, and nobody will be left wondering about an incinerated corpse in a barely charred room.
From a single dropped match, this is what resulted in 18 minutes. with no accelerants, no unusual materials. In fact, some effort made to limit the amount of fuel present. And we still ended up with a gutted room.
It's been a bad day for skeptics and a chance for believers to gloat.
You recreated the George Mott fire scene, and you got this result. We're delighted. This is not a phenomenon that lends itself to repeatability. Mainstream science, in large part, doesn't even recognize the precise conditions that were present when one of these amazing events transpires.
But one experimental misadventure does not disprove the theory behind it. The Wick effect, for the scientifically minded, remains a far better explanation for bizarre fires than spontaneous human combustion.
Very difficult to exactly duplicate a particular bizarre burning death. In fact, you can't do it. Each event is different. So an experiment won't always work. Nevertheless, even though an experiment might go awry, we know for a fact that the Wick effect exists, and it is clearly the explanation in the George Mott case.
Even if the Wick effect solves the case of George Mott, it seems to shed no light on the case of Adele Waldeck, whose thigh burst into flames in front of several witnesses.
大家好，我是台中县长黄仲生。不知道各位有没有体验过骑单车旅游的乐趣？本月份的国家地理风云榜将邀您一起发现单车旅游的新体验。从2个车轮的铁马到10只脚的骏马，让我们以冒险的心情出发，重新来认识这个世界。每逢周五晚上10点，国家地理风云榜。
Back in Belgium, Larry Arnold and Mark Benecke are about to get a major break in Adele's case. In an old lab report analyzing Adele's clothes and the shell from the incident, Benecke finds an overlooked clue.
And in here it says that large amounts of sodium were found. So that, it would make sense.
Sodium is a waxy metal that doesn't dissolve in water. It goes berserk.
Once sodium reacts with water, it produces a very aggressive substance, sodium hydroxide. Heat develops during this reaction, and this heat ignited then the clothing and all the fabric. It starts to fly around, so maybe these were the sparks that they saw. It's very difficult to extinguish, and this is exactly what the witnesses said. From this here, there is no need to assume that something supernatural was going on in this particular case.
This is the likely scenario. Sodium from the fireworks littering the beach contaminated the shell Adele put in her pocket. When she added a wet handkerchief into the same pocket, the sodium ignited.
Hello?
It's time for Arnold and Benecke to present their findings to Adele.
The test strongly suggests that it's sodium, something with sodium. Now, if you take sodium and put it together with water, it will produce heat. So maybe enough heat to really, in some cases, to really burn things.
And right now, we are tending towards a belief in a spontaneous combustion due to some chemical element.
You had heat, you had sparks, you had synthetic substances, and this is, I guess, how the fire really started.
So for now, spontaneous combustion, definitely. Spontaneous human combustion, that's going to remain, in general, as well as in your particular case, a mystery yet to be finally resolved.
Do you think that now the chemical reaction is a good explanation?
A good explanation, yes. Because I couldn't believe that I should start a fire into myself.
Now that science has begun to unravel the mysteries of these strange fire deaths, can we solve the case of George Mott? A final question remains. If he did not spontaneously combust, what started the fire that killed him?
There are a couple of possibilities as to how the events transpired with Mr. Mott's incident.
One clue is similar in many cases of alleged spontaneous human combustion. Smoking. Nobody will ever know for sure if he lit a cigarette that night, but DeHaan believes it is a possible scenario.
I've seen reports both ways, that he was a smoker and had given it up, or was still a smoker. That is a scenario that has to be considered. He was in bed, that there was an accidental ignition source in the vicinity of the bed, most likely, and that he was overcome by carbon monoxide, and he never wakes during the entire process.
Carbon monoxide, an odorless, lethal gas created by smoldering bed linens, could have rendered him deeply unconscious. Then the fire could have burned through his skin and ignited his fat, turning him into a slow-burning human candle. His clothes and bedclothes acted as a wick, his fat as the wax. The fire never got hot enough to burn anything else in the room.
The wick theory is a major breakthrough, and it is clearly the explanation in the George Mott case.
It's all explainable by ordinary combustion processes.
The scientific truth is that nobody has ever witnessed a human being, or an animal for that matter, spontaneously combust and turn to ash. The more awful truth is that the vast majority of supposed victims of SHC were elderly and infirm, often overweight, often smokers, and utterly alone.
It's not the ball player on the 30-yard line out on the ball field in front of thousands of people and on national television who spontaneously combusts.
Boy, wouldn't it be something if we could watch it happen? I hope it wouldn't be you or me.
Our friends know that if they see our body going up in smoke or flame, the first thing they better do is grab a camera and photograph it, because that's going to be our testimony to science that this phenomenon really does occur.
But until that happens, spontaneous human combustion probably burns brightest within the fires of the human imagination.
There is no myth that I know of that is nearly as remarkable as scientific truth.
It's just about truth. I mean, truth by itself can be very beautiful.